What's happening in Indianapolis, Indiana? This is Jeff Gamble, and this is the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. And we're getting started again with a new series for the 21 Laws, going over the program, showing you how you can use this to build your business. And gonna throw out some quick invites real quick. Make sure we get everybody on here. What is happening? Morning. Good afternoon to others. Susan, what's happening? Shane's watching. How's it going? We're just getting up here and rolling. There is Bess. Hello, good morning. Going once. Hello.
Oopsie. Sorry.
You're all good.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to some. Welcome to this MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. We are Jeffrey David Gamble of My Leadership Network and Bess McCarty of MLM Millionaire Club. Thanks to Jeff, he's a John Maxwell certified trainer to lead these calls to teach the wonderful leadership principles of John Maxwell. These are generic trainings we bring you every lunchtime, every noon Eastern time, every weekday. So hello, Guy, Roy. So glad to see everybody here. And if you're watching the replay, we'd love if you type in replay. Love to know where you're from too. Our purpose to help. Hey, Joyce, welcome. Our purpose to help people grow, to educate, equip, and empower entrepreneurs and create independent servant leaders. Now, yesterday, we completed the 21 laws. So far over the last month, we've completed the 21 laws of leadership by John Maxwell. And there's a book in the link when we're done so that you can follow along with that free book. So we've completed these laws. Now we're starting over. And Jeff, I wonder if you do a little demo with me to show why we're starting over. Jeff is a bodybuilder. And I wonder if you would show us one of your biceps.
The biceps. Yeah, so you have to go back to the gym again and again. You know, if you want to grow, you're going to have to do the work over and over again. Actually, it's funny enough, we were just talking about arms the other day and how that's one of the harder body parts to grow because it's something that a lot of people don't necessarily focus on, just like calves. Calves are really hard to actually build muscle on because they kind of get used so much, but we think of use as, oh, I'm walking, I'm doing this, but to actually work out and grow them, it is ridiculously difficult. Hi, Joyce.
So did you lift a weight once to get that?
Many times.
That's why we're doing these shows, and that's why we're repeating them. That's why we're going through them again and again. It takes us each time to a different level, gains us a little bit more spiritual muscle. I could show you mine, but it's not as impressive as Jeff's. Mine's a little. So thank you for that demo. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing it. That's why we're studying it. Deeper layer each time. That's what we get, deeper layer. Thanks, Jeff, for that.
Absolutely.
He didn't know I was going to do that. You never know what's going to happen. Welcome, Joyce. Welcome, Ben. So today is number 1. We start over with 21 laws, the law of the lid. And John Maxwell likes to start out with this because it so affects our effectiveness as a leader. Right, Jeff?
Yep, absolutely. Amy's with us. Welcome. So here's what we're going to do, guys. We want to kind of go over that. You know, for those of you who don't know, all of these laws, there's a couple things that come with them. You know, while technology changes and marches forward, principles don't change. So number 1, all of the laws that we're going to talk about can be learned. So if you are like, hey, I just heard these for the first time, I have no idea what these are, they can be learned. They can be studied, just like anything. You know, one of the questions John was always asked when he teaches this is people always come up and say, hey, I got a question. Are leaders born? You know, and he said it's always funny how people ask, you know, they ask in a couple different ways. He says, but are leaders born? He's like, well, of course leaders are born. All people are born. And he's like, they're like, no, what they're actually asking is are some people just naturally born leaders? And he's like, no, there is no magic wand that people are touched with automatically. Now, some people will grow up in a leadership environment and it'll seem like they have those qualities, but they have those qualities because of the people that are around them early on. And I've seen this, you know, there's certain people in school that from a very early age, it seemed like they just had those leadership skills. But he said all the laws can be learned. Some are easier to understand and apply than others, but everyone can learn them. Dakota's with us. What's happening, sir? So that's the first thing. The second thing is the laws stand alone. You know, each law complements the other ones, but you don't need the other ones to actually physically have the one that we're talking about. Just like the one we're going over today. Number 3, the laws carry consequences. So if you ignore them, you will be unable to lead well, and you'll also suffer the consequences of not knowing that law. And I personally have suffered the consequences of not understanding these. And then 4, the laws are the foundation to leadership. So once you've learned these principles, you basically start applying them, and leadership just happens in front of you. So it's like you have to learn the law, you have to understand the law, you go out and apply it, and then it becomes, you know, kind of in your face. Living the law is what you really want. So that way you have examples of, you know, actually doing it. Now, part of the problem is when you have these examples, a lot of times the best way to learn is to mess stuff up. And there's probably no better environment to be able to learn these laws than in direct sales. He said the ultimate of, you know, learning the laws, you're going to learn in a voluntary organization. He said nowhere is that more true than inside of the church. The reason he says it that way, I believe, is simply because, you know, the church is 100% voluntary. People decide to show up. And a lot like direct sales, you know, you might go out and you might be selling people on the idea, but it's really their own, you know, environment. They want to sign up. They decide to sign up. It's a volunteer army that you're building. And the difference is if you do well, obviously there's money. If you do well, there's money. And that, you know, that's the driving force behind, you know, most of the time when people get into direct sales, they're looking for the money. But what I can tell you is before the money, there's the work. And before the work pays off, usually there's leadership skills that have to be put in place to be able to grow your business. So what I want to do is jump right into this. Here's what you can expect from the process as we go. First of all, you're going to learn the law. Then you're going to live the law out in the, you know, out in everyday life. And then all of a sudden, you're going to learn how to actually lead other people to this law because of the examples you've been through. Typically, what you'll find is the best examples of this are the people who have grown organizations and messed it up. Because the more you mess up, the more examples you have of what to do and what not to do. So number 1, let's get into this, the law of the lid. Learning the law of the lid. It says leadership ability is a lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness, how well you're going to go out. And effectiveness has everything to do with how fast you're going to succeed inside of whatever you're doing. So you'll find that some people, and this really made me mad in the beginning, you'll find that some people will go out and work, and they'll go out and show 10 people, and they'll get 3. And some of us, like me, when I got started, you could go out and show 300 people and get 1. You know, and that's, you know, that ratio is bad, but that's just what happens when you don't have any of these qualities. You don't have any of these laws. You haven't built any of this education into what you're doing. The lower an individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid potential. So, you know, if you looked at it on a chart, it's almost like one side goes up as one side goes down. And that's kind of what he shows. He said, effective, competent to produce a person without leadership's influence. What happens is it's just going to go down. You don't understand the laws. You don't know these laws. And your lid is almost like your comprehension of what's going on, you know, with all of these laws. Michael's with us. What's happening? Your comprehension of actually what you're going through, what's going on, what's happening in your group, your ability to, you know, figure out people's personality and things like that. What happens is your lid is your education level on what's actually happening around you. I love what Gary Vaynerchuk says. He said it's your awareness. You know, some people's awareness is very, very high. I was listening to a guy last night who has built one of the largest direct sales companies in the world ever. In 2013, he had a organizational leader. It was one of his direct personal sponsorships. That guy passed away, and that guy's organization represented 1.4 million people underneath him. That's a pretty good organization. That's one leg of 50 that he had. So when we talk about somebody's lid of their organization, it's like, how many people can you influence? How many people can you lead? You know, some people have these principles and some people study these principles. That particular gentleman had studied those principles, but some people are just super aware. What I believe is, you know, the guy who passed had amazing principles. The guy who sponsored him, his lid had to be at least that high to be able to bring him on the team, So he had awareness. And what's funny is the guy who brought him on the team said for the first 3 years that he built, his organization and went out, he had never discovered, or he never had read a personal development book ever. He found it 3 years in. He's like, it changed my life. He goes, I wish I would have had this information earlier. I would have been able to build so much faster, so much more successful, you know, if I would have found this earlier. So, you know, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I found this late, you know, there are some people who never get exposed to this information. There are some people who got lucky. I got lucky. I got exposed at 30, but what if I would have gotten exposed to this information at 20, you know, or if I would have been exposed when I was a teenager? There are certain people who actually, there's a version of some of John Maxwell's books that are based for teenagers. I think this book can be based at almost any age. You can teach these principles. You just have to break them down. Whatever your accomplishment will be restricted or propelled by your ability to lead. So how well we live out the understanding of the laws will determine what our lid is. So this is something you really want to dive into. You really want to understand. Now, what the lid on my leadership is how do I find that number? How do I find out where I'm at? This is the test for those of you who guys, you know, who want a test to find out exactly where you're at. And what you need to do is you need to look at this test in 3 ways. Number one, you're going to test yourself. You're going to come up with a number. Number two, you're going to test somebody close to you. You know, a family member, a significant other, a spouse. So that's the second person. The third person is you want somebody that you've worked with, you know, maybe currently working with, but somebody you've worked with to also grade you on this. And then what you want to do is you want to take the average of the three, look at where you and the person you've worked with think you're strong at. Look at where you and the person who's around you think you're strong. Also, you have to look at what everybody thinks you're weak. You might think you're weak in things that you might not be as weak in, but if other people think you're weak, so it gives you a really good awareness of what's happening. So what I want to do is I want to go through each one of these 21. And there's 21 characteristics. And this is the 21 indispensable qualities. These are the qualities of a leader. You know, today we're talking about the law of leadership, but these are the qualities that you need to become a leader. So let's just go through these. The first one is character. Character. What kind of character do you believe you have? Not are you a character, because some of us are characters. I know there's a couple people on here. Number two, charisma. Charisma. What kind of energy do you bring to the table? Number three is commitment. What kind of commitment level do you have? What kind of follow through do you have? When you say you're going to do something, do you do it? Do you follow through? Number four, communication. How well do you communicate? How clearly do you communicate? Number five, competence. Competence. Do you understand what's going on, what's being said? Number six, courage. Number seven, discernment. Do you have the ability to decide when things are going on? You know, do you have good discernment of when to do things? Number eight, focus. Got a book on the shelf over there, The Power of Focus. Talks about working on one thing, all energy in one area. When I do the achievement seminars that we do, focus is a lot of it. We focus on one goal for the year, not 15 goals for the year, you probably have one big goal that you need to accomplish. And if you accomplish that one goal, you'll accomplish everything else you need to do. Is that 8, 9? Generosity. Generosity. How apt are you to give without needing anything back? Generosity. Intuitive. Andrew's with us. What's happening? Intuitive. How intuitive are you? Meaning, are you able to pick up on the things that are lying underneath? You know, your intuition will kick in and say, you know, you ask somebody, how are they doing? And they're like, I'm fine. You have to be able to pick that out. And they're not fine. Listening. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Some people are trying to use the theory of 2 mouths and no ears. Let me just talk to you again and again and again because I don't think you can hear me. Then you have passion. How passionate are you about what you're doing? Ben's with us. How's it going? Positive attitude. Do you have a positive attitude no matter what happens? Are you the one that everybody comes to because in a crisis situation, you're the one that's positive that can figure things out? Or you just get negative with everybody else and woe is me? Next is problem solving. When a problem arises, how well do you kind of jump and figure out, okay, what are all the options? What are all the solutions here? Relationships. Relationships is next. How well are you at developing relationships? How well do you keep relationships? I had a friend say, you know, if you find somebody that, you know, based on their age, that has had friends since since grade school, and they still have those friends years later, you can usually figure out what's going on with a person by how long they've had relationships with people. Are they decades long or are they minutes long? Responsibility. You know, if somebody gives you a task, are you the one that says, yes, I'll do it, and then can go complete it? Do you take on responsibility? Hey, you know, the buck stops here. I'll figure it out. I'll make sure it happens. Can people count on you? Security is next. You know, I think security has a lot to do with, you know, are you secure? Meaning, you know, sometimes it's financial security, but also it's emotional security. The security of, if I tell you something, are you going to keep it? Are you going to hold on to it? Can I count on you? Security of, when I run into you, are you going to be stable when we run into you? Or is it the next drama situation? It's my car, it's my house, it's my card, it's my, you know, my hair's falling out, you know, whatever it is. You know, people just have, you know, weird security. Rico, what's happening? Next is self-discipline. Do you have the ability to show up and do what it takes over and over and over again, regardless of the situation and what's going on? That's why I like to find people who love working out and love, you know, kind of putting themselves into some kind of, you know, positive state. The self-discipline of working out, and you typically have to do things that are uncomfortable consistently to stay in shape. So, you know, whether you're talking about an athlete or you're talking about somebody who works out, it's just one of the things I found. What's happening, Tom? Next is servanthood. Servanthood, are you willing to help ahead of time? You know, that's one thing Tom just jumped on here that's always really good at. You know, anytime we show up to an event or whatever, he's always like, hey, is there anything I can do? Is there anything I can help with? Is there anything I can grab for anybody? That's such an important trait to have inside of building with teams. Number 20 is teachability. You know, that's part of Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich says, number 1, you need a white hot burning desire. Number 2, you have to be humble and teachable. And if you're not humble and teachable, you know, there's probably a block there. It's one of the things you want to learn how to do. And last is vision. Can you see it working? Can you see it working where it's so crystal clear, where you can describe it to somebody and they can see it working? This helps a lot in building an organization. Can you see us bringing in those first 3 people? Can you see those 3 organizations growing, or 4 organizations, or 6 organizations, or 2 organizations, or whatever it is, and you're, you know, inside of your network marketing direct sales company, you know, how it's structured? Can you see this happening? We get the first 2, and then the next 2, and then the next 2, where we're sponsoring 3 people a month or 4 people a month. So what you want to do is, now that you have the 21, character, charisma, commitment, communication, competence, courage, discernment, focus, generosity, initiative, listening, passion, positive attitude, problem solving, relationships, responsibility, security, self-discipline, servanthood, teachability, and vision. You want to add them all up on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 to 10, and you want to add them all up, and you want to divide by 21. And what that'll do is that'll give you the number. It'll give you a number, obviously under 21 or at 21 if you're absolutely flawless. If you're absolutely flawless, you don't need this training. You can skip the rest of it. In fact, you can skip the rest of the lessons completely. You won't need any of them. In fact, we should bring you on to train about these. When I first did this, what I learned was I had 3 or 4 of these. 3 or 4 of these I was really good at. And 18 of them I didn't even know existed. I didn't even know they were part of leadership, that they were needed in leadership. I was like, why was that there? That doesn't make any sense. So my strengths is what I found was like, yes, that for sure is something you need. And my weaknesses were like, oh, that's not as important. It wasn't as important to me, but here's what happens. Because you have 4 different types of personality, what you'll find is certain things that are strong with you are strengths with other people, but they're weaknesses with you. So all of a sudden you can't affect those people in the same way you can affect people who have the same personality as you. And you need more of these qualities, not less of these qualities, to build a bigger group. So B, ask the closest to you to grade your lid. Evaluate and consider the likes and the differences. So what you want to do is find out if you think you're strong in something and somebody else thinks you're strong in something, and then a completely third party thinks you're strong in something, the chances are you're probably strong in that one particular area. But if you do this test and you think you're strong and your significant other doesn't think you're strong, and the people on the outside don't think you're strong, you have to evaluate that and be like, okay, what's going on here? C, go back to the 21 qualities and find out where you can make the biggest impact by growing. Remember to work on your strengths. You want to complement, you want your strengths, but you have to bring the level of these qualities up. If you like, well, I've got all this down, but I'm not responsible and I'll never will be, people will never hand you anything. People don't feel comfortable around you because they don't feel you're responsible enough to take them to where you know, where they need to go. D, things you can do to raise your lid. So let's get into this. Value experience with reflection. What he means is look back over your life and find out how maybe not having one of these qualities is affected, and find out one of the qualities, you know, one of the strengths that you do have. You want to find out what worked because of these qualities. 2, invest in training. That's one of the things that I found that I had to invest money in, is I had to invest money in training. I invest money in the gym. I invest money in supplementation. I invest money in working out simply so I can grow. Mikhail, I observe the environment, reign for inner seeds of wisdom for your unconscious. Okay, I'm going to come back to this because I can't read it while I'm actually scrolling here. So I'm going to come back and hit on this. But they just wrote something really cool that I want to hit on in a second. So invest in training. I found that one of the best places that I could invest my money outside of my body and nutrition is invest in physical training, invest in the mental training, invest in the emotional training of going out and building a business. A book allows you to think with somebody else's mind. And my mind didn't have a real wide spectrum of stuff that I went out and did. Meaning I had gone to school and I'd watched some movies and I'd listened to some music, and that didn't give me a wide enough array to be able to affect people. I had to read books. Number 3, mentorship and coaching. Finding somebody who knows how to do this and then learning from them. Coaching, paying a coach to say, hey, here's what I'm doing. What should I be doing? 4, mastermind and focus. Masterminding is nothing more than getting together with a like group of people and discussing topics specifically to what you're doing. Specifically to what you're doing. Do something beyond yourself. I think that do something beyond yourself means get out of your comfort zone. hey, I'm going to go somewhere that's not the same place I've always been. You know, we are all creatures of habit. We go to the same place. We shop at the same stores. We go to the restaurants. We eat the same things. It's kind of good every once in a while to get outside of your comfort zone, try something new, get around new people, different experiences, because what it does is it makes you grow and understand more. 6, reflect on who's been the lid lifter in your life. You know, look for people who have tried to stretch you beyond. Hey, let's go do something completely new. Hey, let's go try something. You know, and to a point, you know, you don't want to wear clown shoes and run through a minefield. That's not what we're saying. We want you to, you know, experience something new, like, hey, let's go to an event of some kind. Let's go to a training of some kind. Let's read a book of some kind that maybe we're, you know, you're unfamiliar with the artist. What characteristics make a person a lid lifter? Another good question. I like this one. His last one is make a stop doing list. What are some things you need to stop doing or replace with other things? What are some things you need to stop doing? Wasting time, not having a schedule, hanging out with certain people. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Bess and get her insights.
Thank you, Jeff. Gosh, I took notes. I noticed which ones were my 3 weakest ones in my link, and I will develop a plan to strengthen those. I like lid lifters. I like that a lot. And I want to say hi to Nancy and Michael and Fernando and Mihai and Christian and Thomas and Gladys and Vicky. Vicky, thank you for sharing about the show. I saw you shared this with a friend today on our Facebook group, the MLM Millionaire, the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. Thank you for sharing on there with a friend about these classes, about these shows. And Mihai wrote some really cool stuff that's good for contemplation. He visits sometimes and drops these contemplative seeds. So you may want to go back through and enjoy what he wrote. Someone said, yes, it's happy first of the month. Yes, a fresh start, a fresh canvas, isn't it? And Jeff mentioned 1 billion people in his leg, his downline. That's a lot of lives to change. That is just awesome. That's the power of a leader. And I just read that leadership multiplies, it multiplies things. It raises when you raise your leadership ability, it increases the overall effectiveness many times without you having to increase your success dedication. So whatever you're doing, it will be worth the personal investment that Jeff mentioned, to invest in yourself as a leader. If you're getting value here, love if you share with people or like or comment, because we do love to help as many people as possible. Also, if you have a question, please type that in, because in a few minutes we'll take questions or answer questions. And if you about this leadership or network marketing itself. And if you have a takeaway that you've gotten just now, a gem that you can walk away with, we'd love if you type that in too. So a little story in the book 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. You may have heard of McDonald's. You may have heard of this little restaurant called McDonald's. Started originally by Dick and Maurice McDonald. And they evolved really essentially fast food. They decided to get the food to the people real fast and set up this assembly line, and it was ahead of their time of any other restaurant. So they became famous for that. That was in the mid-50s. They developed their restaurants. They actually sold only 10 franchises. Well, they sold 14, but only 10 actually opened up. And with that, they were bringing in profits of at the mid-50s, $100,000 a year profit that they split. That was in the mid-50s. That was pretty good back then. However, their leadership had a ceiling to it, had a lid to it. When Ray Kroc came in and bought one of those franchises and started developing it, he took their restaurants from, in 4 years, 1955 to 1959, he increased the number of restaurants to 100. The next 4 years, 500. And then today there's way over 21,000 restaurants in 100 countries. So that is an example of the difference in leadership. It can be a lid, it can be a ceiling according to the abilities that Jeff just listed. And how does that apply to network marketing? Well, you could have the same profession, right? Some people call it an industry. I like to call the network marketing a profession. So two different people, they could be in the same profession, even the same company, and even have the same sponsor, but get completely different results. And that rests on your leadership abilities that Jeff just mentioned, and these 21 laws too. That's why we're teaching these. And that's why I believe that you're here, so that you can be the person to have the different results. And I'll go back to Jeff here.
So guys, the McDonald's one is a good example, but there's so many good examples. I mean, most of us are on a phone, and I would say that if you're on a smartphone of any kind, that all probably relates back to a guy by the name of Steve Jobs. And if you don't know Steve Jobs from Apple's story, he actually was the one who started the Apple company. Steve Wozniak himself, in a garage, had an idea to, start physically making some different products, and came out with a very, user-friendly, the original Apple computer. The company grew. He became a billionaire at a very, very young age. And then because of some of his ways of wanting to do things and, ways of affecting people, he actually was let go. They created a board of directors, and the board of directors were like, yeah, this guy's a wild card. Although he had the idea to start the company, now that's up and rolling, we're going to get rid of him. And they got rid of him. Years later, Steve went off and developed a couple other companies, the company Next, which created some of the technology for Pixar. And Pixar ended up coming back and collaborating with Apple, and Apple ended up acquiring the company Pixar and acquired Next, which was the company Steve was involved with, which was some of the technology to create the Pixar animated films. So here he ends up back inside the company. Well, they had gone through some changes and had hired a CEO from PepsiCo. And unfortunately, the guy from PepsiCo had limited ability. His lid was limited in who he was working with and what he was doing. And the Apple company was actually 6 months away from collapsing, 6 months away from going bankrupt. Their stock had dropped, everything had dropped. And they turned to someone who was an innovator. They turned to somebody who had the ideas to sit down, and they actually, the board of directors got back together and said, if we look at who's affecting the company the most right now, it's one guy. It's the guy who created all this. It's Steve Jobs, and they ended up bringing Steve Jobs back to the front of the company. And the very first thing he did, I thought this was really interesting in his story. The very first thing he did is he started looking at all these different devices. Apple, when he returned, he said that they were working on something like 55 different objectives. And what he did is he kept narrowing it down. He's like, he was really good at, being an observational leader in what's important, what's the future, what's coming. And he kind of like was sifting through all their different things of like, this is crap and this is crap and get rid of this and get rid of this and get rid of this. And he narrowed it down to 15, and then he narrowed it down to 4. And he picked up one device and he said, I believe that this is the future. I believe that, music is the one thing that affects people. And if we could take this little device, which was, basically the size of a business card, if we could take this device and put music on it, digital music, this is going to be the future. And that was the iPod. And I remember seeing the iPod and kind of jokingly saying to my dad, I said, what's going to hit big? When they figure out how to make the phone and the iPod and all that stuff together, it's over. Whoever figures that out first. About 4 years later, I had nothing to do with the creation of the iPhone. I just thought it'd be cool if it was all on one device. Boom, all of a sudden it's all on one device. Because at that time, what I realized is I had a Walkman and I had a PDA and I had a phone. And I was like, whoever figures out how to put all this together, game over. And a few years later, boom, there comes the Apple device. And if you track how Apple did it, if you track the numbers, you talk about a couple of the laws, you can read his story and you can see the law of explosive growth on how they started bringing more and more people to his company, the right people. innovative people who were, you know, geniuses in their specific area, smarter than the whole of the people. But they were geniuses in one particular area. They went out and found those people and started gathering those type of people together and masterminding and getting those ideas. And Steve would come in and be like, I mean, he came in and he said the first time they came in, they had the iPod and it was like 4 inches thick and it was 5 inches wide. And he's like, make it smaller. And they were like, Steve, this is as small as it gets. I mean, they went from a ghetto blaster that wouldn't even fit in the screen to, you know, a Walkman that was this big and this big. And then, you know, they still couldn't fit it. And he's like, no, make it smaller, make it smaller. He was so demanding to what it bit. And finally, they got it down to, you know, whatever the original iPod, which was about twice the size of this. And he's like, there, that's what's, and boom, you know, the iPod takes off. And it turned the company around. Look at the stock today. Look at the company today. They ended up building their new corporate headquarters, which was like a $5 billion project. The Space Center Circle thing that they've got going on in you know, San Fernando Valley. It's amazing what happened, but his story represents the law of the lid so well. So let's kind of finish this up. Could you grow your leadership by just 1% a day? Could you? If you could grow your leadership by just 1% a day, one lesson, if you could get one nugget out of this, and here's what I would challenge you to do, because this is kind of two lessons kind of back to back that you'd be able to use. What I found is people like being around people they know who are growing, who are going in a new direction. And one of the things I started doing is I started reading a chapter out of a book every day. And what my goal was is to come up with one, maybe two quotes and or insights. An insight necessarily isn't a quote, it's just like a lesson learned, something you could teach. And I would write those down and I started taking notes. I started taking notes on my computer. Now, the reason I started taking notes on a computer rather than a notebook is I wanted to be able to email myself all the notes later. So that way at any point in any time, anywhere in the world, as long as I had access to email, I could actually recall all my notes that I have ever read of any book that I've ever gone through. So I take pretty detailed notes. I mean, they're kind of like the cliff notes of the book. If there's a quote in there that I like, if there's a story in there that I like, if there's bullet points to, you know, a training, I have the bullet points down. So that's how I started taking notes to what I'm doing. And what I wanted to find every single day was I wanted to find a quote and or a lesson. And I started taking those quotes and lessons, and every single day I started posting those quotes and lessons. And what I found is because the quotes and the lessons were usually positive, they were usually teaching something, they were usually training something, they were usually something that helped me, I knew would help somebody else. What I did is that's what I started posting on social media. That's what I started posting on my Facebook or my LinkedIn account or my Twitter account. I made a picture of it and put it on Instagram. That's what I started doing. And what happened was I was amazed at the number of people that I was able to attract. People came after it. They were like, oh my gosh, all your stuff's so positive. Oh my gosh, you know, I want to learn more. You know, where do you come up with all this stuff? I didn't come up with any of it. It all came from the books I was reading. But here's what people I think started learning is that I was growing. And because I was growing, and growth is not normal in everyday society. See, people think that growth is normal. Growth is not normal. Growing older is normal, but growth is not normal. Most people avoid growth. Most people get to a certain point where they think they've got it. Oh, I know that. I'm good. You know, most people go for entertainment, not education. So what I did is I kept growing and I kept learning new things and I kept in this, and it started attracting more and more people. If you want more and more people coming to you, grow. Learn something new. This was the easiest way for me to do it because I was kind of stuck in a certain place in my life where I didn't have the money to go out and meet a bunch of different people. But as you can see behind me on the bookshelves, I was able to meet tons of people. Some of them had passed away already. I was able to get their lessons and their ideas and their quotes and their stories and the things they looked up. And what I did is I started just putting that out there, and more and more people came to me. So if you're looking for a positive way to affect people, no matter where you're at, read, take the lessons, take the quotes, put them up online, make pictures out of them. You know, sometimes I would find a picture and put the quotes on a picture and then put the picture up. And people are like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Where did you get that from? I was like, I got it from my computer. I made it. They're like, oh my gosh, you make quotes? It's photoer.com, F-O-T-O-R.com, Photoer. It's pretty simple. You just type it in and pick the font and then save it. And then you've got a saved picture. Very cool stuff. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Bess for any closing thoughts. We're a little bit past our 30-minute time frame. So what else do we need to cover before we move on for lesson tomorrow.
Yes, thank you so much. Real quickly, that story about Steve Jobs, essentially, I could boil that down for myself to the leadership quality of vision. And for me, more than anything, that is the lid, that is the ceiling, is how big is my vision, because that's only as high as I can grow or bring a group along with me. I talked to one friend one time, and I said, what is the toughest thing in working with your team? What is the toughest thing in network marketing and working with your team? And she said, helping them to get past the 4,000 a month mentality. That's what they're used to making or thinking that they can make at a job or that they see other people make. And she said, it's helping them to shift that paradigm beyond that. So we shift the vision. And I want to welcome Julie, Becky, and Judy. Now, Becky Gustafson is a person who I don't think has a lid. I don't think she has a ceiling. She's constantly learning and growing and knowing that she can. Becky and Judy are members of our Sunday night basics class and also members of the MLM Millionaire Club, our school for network marketers that Jeff and I are teaching from. I'll put the link to that if you wish on Sunday nights. It's really, really, really good foundational stuff. Everything that you need to know to move fast and move your team fast, plus the skills and everything. If you would like to get notices of these, just go to these noon shows. Just go to the Facebook group MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show and request to be a member there if you're not already. And you can invite people to do the same thing. You can invite your team or friends and people to do that too. And hey, Jim Bailey, welcome. So that's today, and tomorrow is the law of influence. This is the true measure of a leader. So that will be exciting too.
Guys, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We appreciate everybody for being on here. If anybody has anything, is there a replay available? There will be a replay available. Obviously, we'll save this. We'll put it on the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. We also have a YouTube channel that we're going to put this on so that way it can be transcribed, closed caption for our deaf organization, or if you have any deaf organization or deaf friends that would also, benefit from this information, we'd love to be able to get this information to them. So we started putting it on YouTube because YouTube will actually transcribe it for closed caption. So we appreciate everybody for being on tomorrow, same place, same time, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. We come on for about 30, maybe 40 minutes. We might go over every once in a while, but we appreciate the audience and everybody here. If you have any questions or concerns or takeaways, please write them in the comments and we will get back to them even after the show is over. So we appreciate everybody for being on, and have a great day and a great start to August. Thank you.
Thank you.